Welcome to On the Media's very first live stream ever.
Good afternoon, I'm Joe Baker, a member of the Delaware Tribe of Indians.
Good evening. Welcome. My name is Sari Kamen. I am the Public Programs Director of MOFAD, the Museum of Food and Drink. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our virtual program this evening, which explores the cuisine and culture of Aichi Prefecture. I really want to thank the Greene Space for partnering with us on this program and this series, which has been going on for several months virtually. As you all know, we've been in a pandemic for almost a year now. So, one of the silver linings has really been collaborating with other institutions like the Greene Space, which has been such an incredible partner, and getting to connect with people all over the world. And tonight we are truly doing that. I have to say, this is our first program. We have people from literally all different parts of the world that are joining us tonight. It's so exciting. We have Chef Sachie coming from New Zealand. We have Kaz coming from Nagoya and Aichi tonight. I'll have them introduce themselves all to you, other guests in Brooklyn, but it's such a remarkable thing that, throughout all this, we found ways to really just build community and collaborate and connect in ways that we otherwise had not before. So without further ado, I will pass it over to have everyone introduce themselves. Just want to remind you that this is a collaborative series between MOFAD, the Museum of Food and Drink, and the Greene Space, and we have another program next month in April. It is April 8th, so I hope you'll come to that. It is all about tracing the Caribbean roots of fried rice. So kind of exploring the Afro-Caribbean history of that Chinese dish. So I hope you'll join us in April for that. So first I am going to ask my friend Chef Sachie to introduce herself, coming in from New Zealand, one day ahead in the future. Sachie,
Hi, everyone. Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
Great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sachie Nomura, all the way from New Zealand. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm Japanese, born and grew up in Aichi. So this topic is very interesting, or rather excites me. So I have an Asian cooking school based in New Zealand. We teach people how to cook, of course, Japanese food, but Asian cuisines. And I've been doing that for the last 10 years, and I have about 60,000 students in their house. And on top of that, I've been producing some products as well as TV shows that syndicate over 50 different countries and cookbooks. So I'm having really good fun with the food, and I'm hoping that I can share my passion of the food with you today. Thank you, Sari.
Thank you, Chef Sachie. Okay, now we have all the way from Nagoya in Japan, Kazumasa Nishikawa.
Hi, my name is Kazumasa Nishikawa. I'm the dancer of the classical Japanese dance. This is me when I'm working, and I'm the Iemoto headmaster of Nishikawa Ryu, which is the dance school, which has been around for like 170 years in Aichi. And plus I'm the graduate of School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. So I'm very excited to be here, and I'm gonna be talking about Aichi cultures. Hope you like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kazumasa. Okay, we have Murray Carter, bladesmith you're in Oregon this evening.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, my name is Murray, and I was born and raised in Nova Scotia, Canada. When I was 18, I happened to travel to Japan, and I fell into an apprenticeship with a 16th generation Yoshimoto bladesmith in Kumamoto, Japan. They have an uninterrupted 16 generations of lineage that goes back to Keicho Sannen, which is about 450 years ago. And I forge a lot of kitchen knives such as this. And in my 33 years of career so far, I'm approaching 30,000 hand-forged and completed blades.
Amazing, thank you, Murray. All right, Akiko Katayama.
Hello, I'm not from Nagoya, but I'm a host and the producer of Japan Eats on the Heritage Radio Network, which aims to introduce Japanese food and food culture to a global audience. And also I write for Forbes.com and cover Japanese food and food culture, and I do many other things, but food and Japanese tradition is my passion.
Thank you, Akiko. And finally, Michael Harlan Turkell, who is our host tonight. He is the reason we are all together this evening. So take it away, Michael, and enjoy the evening. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Sari. Thank you, MOFAD, Greene Space, and all tonight's participants. This has been a felicitous thing, being that I never intended to go to Aichi. I was lucky enough that a few years ago, I was invited by Chef Chris Jekyll to join a project that he was working on, helping import Aichi food ingredients. It was coordinated by this woman, Yuko Suzuki, and I got to go to Aichi to experience a lot of these artisans, from hatcho miso, which we'll talk about shortly, shiro tamari, which is a white soy sauce, wonderful matcha, tsukudani fish, unagi, better than I've ever had eel before. And what was so fascinating to me is that as a traveler, I hear most people saying, well, I'm going to Japan. And you ask them, where are you going? They say Tokyo, maybe Kyoto and Osaka. But no one ever says Aichi. No one ever says Nagoya, which is the fourth largest city in all of Japan, and really is only half an hour away from Kyoto and Osaka. It's actually en route from Tokyo. That's like saying I'm not going to stop in Boston if I'm heading to Maine from New York. But what was so intriguing about going to Aichi the first time was how modest it was, but at the same time, how ingrained it was, not only in culture, but an understanding of its humility. It's not the flashiest city, even though some people might beg to differ. It's a city based on now cars and technology. but it is also an export city of not just those industries, but food and culture. And this is what we're going to explore tonight. Another thing to mention about Aichi is that it really is in the center of mainland Japan. Where it sits on the east of Ise Bay spans from that capital city of Nagoya all the way down to Toyohashi, which is the home of a car company called Toyota. But in between, that's where all the amazing food artisans lay. And tonight we're going to explain who they are, what they do, but also get a real great frame of reference of where Aichi is and why everyone should experience it in person someday. So first, let's start off by talking to Kaz, who's located in Nagoya. I want to start off asking you a question, which might be slightly, contradictory to having an event about Aichi, but the Japan Times wrote in October 2016 that Nagoya is the most boring city in Japan. Do you agree with that? Why would they ever say something of that sort?
Well, I have to say that Aichi people have a big pride. They're proud of themselves, but also they're very modest and they don't want to show off their talents or the histories. So that's why you say like, oh, we're the boring, place. We're the boring people. It's like it's very a natural Japanese attitude. And it's very natural a samurai attitude because samurai are very modest. They don't like show off. But also there were this place is the creator. I should say that they created the modern Japan because one time Japan was separated into a different countries and it was united by three major warlords, Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, which are all from Aichi. And therefore, after Japan was united, all the great talents were separated from Aichi all over to Japan. So we say, I should say like we kind of created the global standard of Japan. That's why we're not, and after all these hundreds of years of generations, we don't even feel like Aichi is so special because, Japan is Aichi.
Akiko, as an outsider / insider, as a Japanese native, where are you originally from and what were your first thoughts of Aichi? Have you ever traveled there yourself?
Well, I'm from Tokyo, but to be honest, when I go to Kyoto, Osaka, Nagoya is a good place. It's in between. And sometimes you buy ekiben, station bento when the Shinkansen stops. But other than that, actually Nagoya, and we should talk about Aichi and Nagoya. They are separate things, I think, like Turkey and Istanbul. But I heard always Nagoya people are very, like Kazu said, proud, and also very different from other parts of the nation because, for example, what I heard, I have to get a confirmation from Kazu, but like someone gets married in Nagoya, and then all wedding gifts are loaded in the furniture and everything loaded in the trunk and running through the city. And I don't know how, but the bigger the better. Like really not the showing off, but being proud of what it got. Kind of like a very different mindset to me.
I mean, Kaz, do you agree with that? It feels like that's modesty and flashiness at the same time.
But actually, I have to say, after when we were in like 21st century, so all the Japan is kind of like in the same standards. So Nagoya people are not so flashy like before, and all of the Japan is becoming like Tokyo, which is kind of boring. It's like all gray, all same, so Japan. I should say young generation of Nagoya or Aichi they're closer to Tokyo standards. Small wedding.
I actually want to loop Sachie into this conversation because having grown up in Aichi and then left when you were 18, 19 years old. Did you leave to escape that that part of Japan and find something else in the world? And what did you take with you? What traditions and cultures did you take with you on your travels to New Zealand?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Michael. So when I was 18, I left for New Zealand. I was meant to come to USA, to be honest. It's just because my personality, by nature, I'm curious about everything, and I just kind of wanted to explore things. And I don't know, I didn't see myself living in Japan back then. It's just because of the traditions, and you know, you have to be same as other people. You can't be unique back then. So this is going back about 20 years ago. But yeah, when I came to New Zealand, I had a modesty personality, but I also wanted to show off kind of personality. I'm guessing that because I'm doing this and I have the TV show, I got the personality came out now, which is great. I think Nagoya people, Aichi people are quite unique in that sense. And I'm welcome to this Kiwi land with that kind of personality when I came over.
I kind of want to segue the idea of those personal characteristics into the characteristics of the food too, because this is an open question to Kaz and Akiko as well as Sachie. The ingredients that we're going to talk about tonight and that Sachie is going to demo are miso, soy sauce, and matcha. Three things that we hear and we certainly associate with Japan, but there's something that makes each of these three ingredients special in relation to this region. Hatcho, that means 8 cho from a specific area in Aichi or in Nagoya. Then the shiro tamari, a white soy sauce, isn't like the throwback crystal clear Pepsi. It is a very specific ingredient tied to that area. And then nishio matcha, Kaz may tell us a very interesting anecdote about matcha that comes from Kyoto, but really comes from Nishio. What is it about these three ingredients that makes them so special? And actually, let's start with Akiko. Have you ever heard of these three ingredients particular to the region, and what makes them different than other misos or soy sauces or matchas?
So absolutely. So especially, you know, there are mainly 3 types of miso. That's rice, barley, and soybeans. So I think 80% of all miso is based on rice, meaning by definition, all the miso is made with soybeans. Plus, if it's a rice miso, it's with rice, and this barley miso, it's with barley. And the barley miso is only made in the south, but hatcho miso somehow around Aichi and the surrounding areas, they have a very specific culture using soybeans only miso, which is interesting because, you know, compared to other miso, rice, or barley, it's thicker and darker, and it sounds like personality of Aichi people. So it's very unique, and
really?
It's very rich. Right. So, and also, of course, you know, the soy sauce, white soy sauce. I mean, there are 2 types of white soy sauce. There's like basically 5 types of different soy sauce, but to make it very quick. So to make white soy sauce, there are reasons, right? White colored soy sauce makes ingredients more visually appealing because it doesn't get everything brown. So, but so the utsukuchi is the more commonly used in Kyoto and, you know, Hokkaido cuisine. But shiro shoyu, the white soy sauce, it's a lot of wheat instead of soybeans. That way you make that color lighter. And also I think white soy sauce is sweeter too. So that's something very unique. You don't see the same kind of soy sauce anywhere else.
And Kaz, you had an interesting story as to why Nishio matcha or Kyoto matcha may come from Nishio. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, yes. There are a lot of great Japanese aichi food, which are there are numerous amount of, sorry about my dog, numerous amount of food are delivered to all over Japan from Aichi or Nagoya, but it's the but as a beginning, Nagoya, people think Nagoya is boring, so Nagoya the brand is a little bit lower than others. So like Nishio, it's better. People wants to buy Kyoto's matcha rather than Nishio's matcha, which where Sachie is from. And um, and the reason why matcha is so popular here is that there are so many samurais are from Aichi, and samurai always practice tea ceremonies. But still, I think all the great people, great samurais, great company owners, or great Ichiro are from Aichi, and they all left from here. And in ancient time, all the great warlords wanted to go to Kyoto and become the great warlord of Japan. So I think Aichi brand is kind of low in a long history. So I have to admit that.
Yeah, we're going to actually watch a small clip from a samurai movie. It's Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. And I actually think it ties into this conversation so well because the samurai in those movies were initially paid with food because the villagers didn't have money to give them. But they were paid in food to defend food, defend rice crops, to defend a modest culture and a modest way of living rather than a flashy way of living. So I think it's kind of a perfect caricature, not even caricature, just the right temper of characteristic of what Aichi might project. So on that note, we're going to watch a small clip from Kurosawa's Seven Samurai.
ある山間の小さな村に侍の墓が4つ並んだ。野心と巧妙に疲れた狂気の時代に全く明理を顧みず。
Hopefully that little teaser makes you want to see more of that movie in the same way that this event makes you want to know more about Aichi. You know, it's not all just samurai culture. There is a lot of modern things that happened in Aichi and Nagoya. And Akiko brought up a really excellent point that we should separate the idea of what Nagoya is versus Aichi, because it is a very big prefecture that spans all along Ise Bay, you know, to the south. But let's talk about other industries. I mean, Kaz, you can talk about dance, but what about car culture, since Toyota's there? What about Sony, the electronic company that revolutionized music? How did those things affect that region?
The pioneer, the founder of Sony is from Aichi. He was born as the brewer of sake, and he didn't want to succeed his job, and he have started his job in electricity, which is a totally new world at that time. But his younger brother, has succeeded the sake company called Morita, which is the biggest sake company in here, and which is still a very effective, big, influential sake company to the whole Japan.
Akiko, I know you might want to chime in a lot about this, the modernity, how technology might has changed other Japanese cities. Tokyo is very modern relative to, say, Nagoya at the moment. But how have you seen these kind of companies change the landscape of older food cultures?
In in terms of, sorry.
How have you seen partnerships or places like Toyota and Sony become involved potentially in food cultures? Having an industrial hub, does that help promote food to the greater part of the world?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think I would say corporations, but big brands. And big brands tend to be more associated with something more kind of like trendy thing. And when you want to capture consumers, it's always related to food. That's my opinion. So anything in your life, like Sony's Walkman, whatever, it tend to be always closer through food culture. So I think my answer is yes.
Excellent. Well, we're going to actually start talking to Sachie about a couple recipes that are deeply rooted in Aichi area. So thank you very much, Akiko and Kazu. We'll be talking to you again shortly, and Sachie is going to actually lead us in a demo. So Sachie, we are going to start talking about the two recipes that you are going to cook for us. And before we do that, let's talk about actual dishes that are known in that area, because having gone to Nagoya and travel around the greater Aichi Prefecture, I've had tebasaki wings, some of my favorite chicken wings in all of Japan. I've had hitsumabashi, which is an eel dish, unagi eel dish. And some of the best eel I've ever had is from the Aichi region. I've also had miso and the komi udon, a great hearty bowl of thick udon noodles, plied with a lot of hatcho miso. But the two recipes that we're going to be demoing today and talking about are misokatsu and tamagoyaki. Can you tell us what those two are?
Sure, no problem at all. So I wanted to demonstrate shortly the misokatsu and the tamagoyaki, which is an egg roll. So both of them are my favorite dishes that my mom used to make. And the katsu is nowadays, I'm not too sure about USA, but it's getting very popular or easily, really available in the restaurants, or you can, you can cook at home. So I thought that it's the ingredients are, versatile. You can use any ingredients. Mainly when we make misokatsu, we use a pork cutlet, pork loin, which I'm going to demonstrate today. And then, but the key or hero of this dish is the sauce, sweet miso sauce, which I'm going to use hatcho miso. The hatcho miso, because it takes about 2 years to ferment to make the hatcho miso in a wooden barrel, like humongous wooden barrel. The flavor of that miso is amazing. It's just rich and mature flavor compared to the other, say, for example, Akiko-san was mentioning that rice miso, which is majority of people will have tasted before. But because of this unique characteristic of the flavor, that makes this sauce so unique to this dish. So I'm gonna share that recipe with you. And then tamagoyaki, so egg roll, I'm going to chop some of the spring onion and then put it in as well. I think that shiro joyu, shiro tamari, so the white soy sauce, highlights of the benefit of the white soy sauce, using a white soy sauce. Obviously, it's not as dark as other hoikuchi or tsukuchi shoyu, so it's just emphasize emphasize the color of the ingredients. Obviously, the egg is yellow. If you use a darker soy sauce, it's get dull color or brownish color. So I hope that I can highlight the yellow, nice bright color by using shiro joyu.
So, well, we're going to start cooking, but I just want to mention that the images you just saw of the hatcho miso is from Aruya Hatcho Miso. And if you go back to the web page where you bought tickets, there's a link to buy that if you weren't one of the lucky ones that actually got the ingredient box. As well as Niro Jozo was the image of the Shiro Tamari. Two amazing artisans. I was very lucky to have ever traveled to Aichi in the first place. And in the past 6 months, I've been helping them proliferate the idea of using these ingredients around the world and started an Instagram account called @eat.aichi. So that's eat.aichi, where you can find out more about all these ingredients. But on that note, Sachie, which one would you like to demo first?
Ooh, shall I go with miso first? Misokatsu first?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
So I just need to reset myself up. So there.
Wonderful.
Cool. Can you see my kitchen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, you can. Fantastic.
Such great mise en place. Already so clean.
So let's get into it. Welcome to my kitchen called Sachie's Kitchen. You are in my cooking studio. Sorry about the sound, might be a bit echoey, but let's get into it. So first of all, I wanted to show you this. This is the hatcho miso. I'm privileged to have this miso being sent to me from Japan. It's clearly when you open it, I've got these two. So this darker one, that's hatcho miso. Can you see the difference in colors? So the white one, it's called awase miso. And this is it looks a lot lighter. It takes about, 3 months to about a year to make these ones. Hence that the color of the hatcho miso is a lot darker because of the fermentation. So I'm going to use this. And the ingredients are, I think I'm only got about 20 minutes to show you how to make them. So I better be quick.
You can do it. We believe in you.
Thank you. So feel free to ask me any questions from there, Michael. So let's make some sauce first, or sweet miso sauce first. I'm gonna put this about, I think everybody have got the recipe. I shared the recipe with you. So about 50 grams of the hatcho miso. For those people who doesn't have access to hatcho miso, don't panic. You can have just the ordinary miso paste that you can find. So about 50 grams there. And then this is a sweet miso sauce. So then I'm gonna have a bit of the white sugar to go with it. And I'm gonna have about a tablespoon of this mirin sauce. So hang on a second, let me have a look. Can you see that well? So that's called sweet cooking wine. That's one of the main condiments that we use, to make Japanese cuisine. So about a tablespoon of that. And I'm gonna use cooking sake. Of course, for those people who doesn't have this and have got a drinking sake, feel free to use that. So I've got about 2 tablespoons of cooking sake in the pot. And then what I find was that I like to thin it down just a little bit more. You don't have to add this, but I find that it's better to add the water to it too. So I'm just gonna add maybe a tablespoon full of the water, just to thin it down a bit. Okay, so I'm putting this pot on about medium heat. You don't wanna boil it, but you want it to dissolve the sugar, and then you want it to make a nice smooth paste. So I'm just gonna leave this one until it picks up a bit of the heat. Okay, so let's make it a katsu. Okay, katsu is, I need to bring the pork. One moment, my assistant is gonna bring me my pork. So what I've got here is I've got egg. So that 1 egg. And flour, just a normal standard flour. And breadcrumb, it's called panko. Is that panko really available, Michael, in USA?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's always in my cabinet because my 1.5-year-old loves things fried in panko more than any other flour.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's really available. For those people who doesn't have them, don't panic. You can just use your bread and then just blitz it all up with a blitzer. and then I put it into oven, low heat, about 100 degrees, and to make it into the breadcrumb like this. And in the meantime, I'm just heating up the oil in my pot. I'm not using a deep fryer. I wanted to make it accessible, so I'm just heating this one up. So,
actually, Sachie, we have a quick question.
Yes.
Nancy asked, is the dark miso barley? And I guess I can answer this. No, it's actually all soybean. And the second one's coming in. Yes, that asks, is cooking sake the same as mirin?
No, it's quite different. As you can see from that, the color-wise, if you can have a look, Deepika. See, the color is slightly darker, ivory color, which is a mirin sauce, which is a quick, the sweet, we call it sweet cooking wine. So what the mirin does is a mirin, say for example, when you are dealing with seafood, you wanted to, sometimes you might get put off by the smell of the seafood. Mirin is a great one to use because it's going to mask off all of those, the smell from the seafood. Cooking sake, on the other hand, have got the ability to soften things. So if you marinate the meat 10-15 minutes with the cooking sake with the other ingredients, it just softens the meat or tenderizes that meat. So that's the two different things. Does that answer the question?
Oh, absolutely. It's such an amazing sauce because really we only have 4 ingredients going to what ends up being a very complex condiment. So I can't wait to virtually taste this from you.
Oh my goodness, look at this. So it's starting to bubble now. So I'm gonna reduce the heat. But this, oh, gorgeous. Oh, I wish that you are all here in New Zealand. Then I can let you just taste this, but you can't. So that means, see. I hope that helps you. It's just so delicious. I'm gonna remove from the heat, and you can cool it down on a cooking bench top. You can put it into a container, store in your fridge. That will last for a long, long time. So what I just did is the meat for pork loin. I just season with the pepper and salt. What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna do using a back of the knife and just tenderize it. So you see that this fat part, the way the skin was, what you can do is you can actually have a bit of that cuts over there. So what it does is preventing that, the shrinking by heat. So by having that cuts right there, it will help you keeping that shape of the meat. So just a bit of that at the back of the knife, give them a bit of that force. Just like that. And then what we wanted to do, let's prepare egg, flour, and a breadcrumb. So for 1 egg, sometimes people add the water. For me, I don't really need to. So this is what I do. 1 chopstick you can use for anything. So stirring and mixing, deep fry, pan fry, all sorts in one single utensil. So order is the flour, egg, and then breadcrumb, and deep fryer is on. Let's go.
I mean, for anyone who's done a 3-part dredge, this is exactly what it is. Flour, egg, breadcrumb. I want to talk about the miso itself a little bit more, because for those of you who don't have hatcho miso in-house, I hope you do go get some. But I think it's also distinctly different in flavor profile than, say, an aka miso, because it's almost chocolatey. It's almost velvety. It's fudge-like in my mind. It has this smoothness that other misos that I've had in the past, even of similar color, don't have. Do you find that when you use hatcho miso? Does it bring you back home?
Oh, yes. Bring it back my hometown right there. Because I'm actually from Hekinan City. In Aichi, they make a lot of condiments. So it's the home of condiments. That's what I call it for Aichi when I describe it. It's a hatcho miso is there from Okinawa. We make a vinegar from Honda's Handa City to Shirojoyu from Okazaki, and what else? Mirin from Hekinan City. So it's really the hub. And then the miso itself is just gorgeous. And awase miso, aka miso, is often that they mix this hatcho miso with other kinds of miso to make it more smoother, because this is quite thick, as Akiko-san was mentioning it. It's I think it's a half of the water quantity is in this hatcho miso. So it's quite a thick miso. So by adding that with or mixing that with other shiro miso or other miso such as like this, will thin it down a little bit and then easier to use, I guess. But the flavor itself, yes, they make a powder version of it. Oh, that's like tastes like a chocolate. So that's fantastic. So can I move to a deep frying this, Michael? Are you happy
Yes, please.
for me to deep fry them?
I'm going to make you multitask too and start you on the tamagoyaki as soon as you can.
As soon as, okay, let me put that heat on then. I'm
Thank
on
you.
then. Fantastic. So let's do this. Okay. So I just dropped a bit of the breadcrumb and see that how hot that temperature is. It might be a little bit hot. Let's go. Gently drop. So I use a neutral oil, rice brine oil here in the kitchen. As long as you don't use any of the olive oil or any seasoned oil or flavored oil, then you're going to be fine with it. So the key here is that not to overcrowd the pot. Otherwise, the temperature get dropped down quite a bit and you won't be able to get the crispy one. How do I know when the food is cooked? Like in this case, it's a pork. How do I know? The three things that we always say is the food will float on the surface. That's number one. Number two is color. Color change to nice and golden brown. Number three is the feeding of it. So what I mean by feeding, I'm not asking you to put the hands in the oil, but I'm going to use chopsticks. And when I lift up the food in the air out of the oil, what I'm feeling is that tingle sensations once everything is cooked through. So what that means, why is that? Is if you can imagine the roast chicken, roast chicken. I believe that you make roast chicken. When you cook the roast chicken, once it's done, if you poke the chicken with a stick, clear juices comes out. Same things happen once the pork is cooked through, clear juices comes out. But we won't be able to escape because I just guarded with the egg and the flour and the breadcrumb. So those clear juices started to bubble because there's a temperature there in the pot is 175 degrees. It's boiling temperature. So that bubble sensation you are feeling, or I'm feeling through this chopsticks. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. I have a few clarifying questions to ask while you plate this misokatsu. The first one is from Katie, who asks if she can sub sherry or rice wine vinegar plus sugar if she doesn't have sake or mirin.
Yes, some people do use a dry sherry to substitute, so which is fine. But of course, the flavor won't be exactly, authentic as it can be. But absolutely, dry sherry, that works perfectly fine as well.
And next question, Teresa asks, do you season the flour or the panko?
Do I?
Season the flour or panko?
I don't need to season any flour or panko at this stage. I just season the pork with pepper and salt. It's just because that miso paste it's got such a rich, unique flavor. So, here you go. Sorry. Sorry, I just need to have my phone with me. It just got the unexpected delivery. So what I'm doing is that I made this one earlier. Like a TV show, right? So we deep fried and then done it for you. And then as a condiment, I'm gonna have this a shredded cabbage. That's a traditional, side dish or condiments to go with it. So we shredded that cabbage, green cabbage. Of course, you can use anything else. You can just even put some broccoli or asparagus or so on. That's fine, Dee, that's all right. And then let me just cut this one for you. Let me have that knife. So I just need a bigger knife, I'm guessing. Nah.
There's another question, but I think I may be able to answer this. Randy asks,
Yes.
Can you talk about sustainable growing practices in Aichi for soybeans? This is something that I'd like to get back to later in the Q&A and loop Kaz into as well, and potentially Akiko, because like everything, there are certainly industrial products and there are artisan products. And I've been lucky enough through this at eat.aichi Instagram account and the work that I've done with this Aichi food export group, I've been able to experience wonderful artisan ingredients, people that care about their practices and the sustainability and the permaculture and what that means for the future of not only agriculture, but of the traditions of Japan and Aichi, without compromising their own integrity. So, Randy, that is a very loaded question, and I hope I began to answer that for you. But I think the more you explore Aichi, the more you find that there are these wonderful pockets of artisans working in smart and sustainable ways. But look at this katsu that Sachie just plated. I mean, how lovely is that?
Can you see it? Can
Yes,
you see
we can.
that? I know I'm conscious about the time, so I'm just carrying through with the other dish is the sweet egg roll or tamagoyaki. So I'm not too sure how long I have. Michael, do you have a time?
You have -5 minutes.
-5 minutes. Okay, I know what I can do. So this is the shiro tamari. Sorry, there you go. That's the shiro tamari that I'm going to use. Just a quick note. Here you go. As you can see, that's how different the color is. So this one is just a normal soy sauce, and this is the shiro tamari, as you can see. The color is so different. So in terms of the seasoning, I'm just going to season with a bit of the soy, mirin sauce, and then I love putting a bit of the spring onion. So that's what I do. Mix it all up. I think that I want to have a time to show you how to make egg roll. Am I right, Michael?
Yes, we're here for it.
You're here for it. Okay. All right, so let's put that frying pan. Traditionally, it's done in a rectangle frying pan. However, those one doesn't come with the induction cooktop setting. So I've got that normal frying pan, which is good, right? Because not many people will have access to that rectangle frying pan, I believe, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I like all shapes equally.
Do you have one then? The rectangle one?
You know, I have almost everything you could wish for in a kitchen except for a tamagoyaki pan. If I find another square foot, that is next on my list.
My goodness. It's because of my space is limited at home. My husband is not allowing me to buy anything. So I have to be kind of creative. So what I just did is that I mixed it all up and then I poured about 1/3 or 1/4 of that filling right there. So I'm going to wait until about 80% is cooked through. Obviously, I just drizzle a bit of the oil and the non-stick frying pan works perfectly fine. So if you're comfortable using chopsticks, use that one. Otherwise, feel free to use the fish slice. So what I'm going to do is come over. So 80% is cooked through. And then I'm going to start rolling from the end, just like so. Can you see that? So flipping over. Yeah. Flipping over. There you go. Ooh. Can you see that?
Yeah,
okay,
I mean, it certainly takes some practice using the saibashi as effortlessly as you are.
Well, just a little bit, Michael. So once you get to that, so you wanted to make it bigger. So I'm going to push this one over to the other end, and then I'm going to pour. My frying pan is really good, so I don't need to oil it again. There you go. Just a little bit more over there. And then just move your frying pan just like so. What I do is I often lift up the end of the egg roll. So then the new batch will attach to this, the ready-made egg roll. There you go. So that's how you make, and then you're just gonna roll all the way, making sure that the egg roll is cooked through. Once it's get to the end, you're just gonna push it out, and then you're gonna make it into another batch pouring in there. So until you finish all of that, the egg mixture, you're just gonna carry through with that. So what I've got is, because it's a -5 minutes or 10 minutes or so, Here's what I made. Don't you love this? Here's what I made.
I mean, you are in the future.
Yes, I'm in the future, so I timed it. So just to make it, there we go. Just to make it nice and unique, so I've got the little bamboo. Presentation makes perfect, right? There you go. And then so it looks like that, yeah? If I use the dark color of the soy sauce, this turned out to be quite dark color. So that's the egg roll with the spring onions.
You see the vibrancy, say if you buy a beautiful egg, you get to retain that vibrancy of color. And I'm sure it tastes great too.
Taste. Oh, you need to come here, Michael. I'll cook you every day. So there you go. That's the egg roll.
Wonderful. That looks so great. Thank you so much, Sachie. Again, you should have recipes delivered to your inbox. And if you did not receive one of the boxes that has the hatcho miso shiratamari, as well as the matcha tea, there are links to be able to purchase those separately. What's also excellent is that Sachie is going to give us a third recipe, which we will be emailing, which is a matcha white chocolate popcorn to utilize that matcha. But thank you so much again. We'll talk to you shortly when we have our Q&A. But now we're going to have a special discussion with Murray Carter, who has been tasked with continuing the 420-year-old family bladesmithing tradition and is now the 17th century Yoshimoto bladesmith. Murray, thank you again for joining us. And thank you, Akiko, for introducing me to Murray to have him as part of this discussion. Now, first and foremost, there was a time when there was a bladesmith in every town. Can you talk about how central knife making was to Japan?
Yes, well, I certainly want to start out by saying how I appreciate the theme of time travel here on this program. Now I'm the 17th century Japanese bladesmith. I love it. We've just gone back 300 years. I could also be the 17th generation Yoshimoto bladesmith as well.
I'm anachronistic.
So it's my understanding that if you go back to the center of any town several thousand years ago, and the village blacksmith was central. And I think anytime any group of people migrated to a new, hitherto unpopulated area, the blacksmith planted his shop in the center of town. And the reason is that the blacksmith made every other tool that every other artisan needed. So the stone workers, obviously the chefs, people that were in agriculture, they all relied upon the blacksmith to make their tools. Historically, the only tool that the blacksmith did not make was his own anvil. Even his hammers and his tongs and obviously blades, drill bits, all of those things were made by the blacksmith. So bladesmithing is to blacksmithing what a pediatrician is to being a doctor. It's simply a specialty unto itself. And you got a bladesmith employs fundamental blacksmithing techniques, but with a basically almost exclusive focus on blades. And then within bladesmithing, I know in Japan, you have katana kaji, which are the bladesmiths that specialize in samurai swords. You have the bladesmiths in Japan who specialize in making tools for miyadaiku, which are the temple carpenters. So they're making special chisels and special plane blades. And then you have the agriculture bladesmiths, or the no kaji, which are going to specialize in either forestry tools, marine tools, agricultural tools, or domestic blades for culinary purposes. And that's my area of expertise. So again, I've made, having trained in Japan for 18 years and then carried on the tradition for almost 33 years in total, I've made tens of thousands of different size and shape traditional Japanese kitchen knives.
On that note, Mori, we actually want to watch a small clip that you sent us featuring Sensei Sakemoto, and he shares a little bit about that rich history. So let's have a quick look.
鍛冶屋の16代目酒本康之と言いますけれども、私その昔の資料とかいうのはなんかなくなっているんですが、まあ話で聞いたところによると、1600年、約400年くらい昔に、最初の人は藤原の千空入道高森っていう人が奈良かなんかから熊本の方に来て、それでお城の近くで鍛冶屋を始めた。だからその時には最初は刀鍛冶、いわゆる刀鍛冶だったわけですけどね。だけどそれがずっと時代が変わっていくにあたって、もう刀の時代からそういうのがなくなったから、いわゆる野鍛冶っていうか、桑を作ったり鎌を作ったり、包丁を作ったりっていうふうな形で、こう時代の変貌に合わせて作っていくものを変えてきたんだっていうふうに、村の鍛冶屋、日本でいう村の鍛冶屋、もうそのちっちゃな町村に一つ、前は10軒も20軒もあったのがだんだん減ってきて、もう一つにあるかないかっていう時代になってきた。これはやっぱりもういろんなテクノロジーっていうか技術、機械がどんどん成長していったから、その鍛冶屋っていうものはだんだんもう忘れられていく存在、それを後を継ぐ人がいないから、もうなくなっていくような状況にある中で、やっぱり森みたいに頑張って日本の心を、伝統を守っていこうというやつがあるから、むしろ心強いし、それがそれこそ伝統を守っていくっていうことにつながっていくんじゃないかななんて思ってます。
Soon, Murray, you'll be making your video for the 18th generation, I'm sure. Let's talk about that transition of, say, katanas to cutlery, kitchen utensils. What is the difference between those two blades from metallurgy standpoint, as well as maybe from an everyday perspective of shape and utility?
Sure. Well, obviously, katanas had to be durable because they were used in combat, and not only the sharpness but the strength and integrity of a sword on the battlefield could mean the difference between life and death. And the one similarity that they have with kitchen knives is the pursuit of a very high level of sharpness. And we've seen, the movies where some hero has thrown a handkerchief up in the air and it floats down and is cleaved cleanly in half on a sword. I'm not sure if that's possible, but that's definitely like an ideal that people are looking for. And I'm going to do a cutting demonstration here in a second, and I'll show you how close we might have come to achieving that. So that's a similarity. A big difference is the samurai swords, in order to have an internal structure integrity so that they would never break, they basically have, through the very center of the blade, if the blade is kind of in cross section like this, there's a section right at the top and in the back that's made out of soft steel. It's not hardened, it's soft iron actually. So from the very tip of the blade all the way back into the handle, you basically have a striation of soft iron right in the middle of the sword, and the hard steel is wrapped around that. So you have the best of hard and soft. The hard is on the outside and the soft is on the very inside. And when a samurai sword is sharpened over and over and over again, and it gets narrower in width with the sharpening, there's a term called togi tsukareta, which means it's tired from being sharpened so many times. And really what it means is you're starting to expose the soft iron in the blade. And even though you have the shape of a sword, it is no longer functional as a sword because you've sharpened away or ground away all the hard steel. Now, conversely, the traditional Japanese kitchen knives, by and large, are created in reverse. We have a carbon steel core that goes from the spine down to the cutting edge, sandwiched in between two layers of soft steel on the outside. So samurai sword is soft on the inside, hard on the outside. What we have with the kitchen knives is soft on the outside, hard on the inside. It's very much like an Oreo cookie or like an old wooden 2B pencil. And the wood on the outside is like the soft steel, and the lead or the graphite core on the inside is like the carbon steel core in the inside of the blade. The advantage of making a kitchen knife like this is that as the blade is sharpened with years and years of use, since the carbon steel up towards the spine is the same hardness as the carbon steel on the cutting edge, you could use this knife, which is about 8.5, 9 inches long, over 20 or 30 years with repeated sharpenings. Even if it's just the size of now a little petty or a little paring knife, it will still have a functional cutting edge because the steel is hardened all the way up to the spine. So where you could have a togi tsukareta katana, you can never have a togi tsukareta sanmai awase or one of these 3-layer laminate constructed blades, if it's forged and quenched properly.
This may sound very layman or fundamental, but what is the advantage of having a very sharp knife in regards to food?
I'm glad you asked. And it comes right back to what Sachie was saying. You know, one of the reasons why, and I'm not a chef, and so I'm learning a lot from this, our get together here today. But one of the reasons why you're using this special white shoyu is so that you can preserve the natural beauty and color of those beautiful, assumably, you know, free range or farm fresh eggs, right? The yellow color. And preserving natural textures and flavors, in my understanding, is a big component of Japanese cuisine. Nowhere is that truer than something like ikizukuri, when they take like a squid and it's alive in the fish tank and the chef will pull it out and prepare it, and you're eating it so fresh that it wiggles as it goes down your throat. Now, that's not everybody's cup of tea, but that's like the epitome of fresh food, right? And this idea of, you know, whether it's tuna or salmon or any of the shellfish and even vegetables, trying to preserve the natural texture, firmness, and obviously flavors is the name of the game with Japanese cuisine. And a dull knife, microscopically, a dull knife, the edge looks like a little bit like a saw because it's getting banged around in the kitchen and maybe it hits some other cutlery in the drawer, or it gets dropped in the sink or hits the stem of a wine glass, or you're cutting into bones or whatever. And a dull knife, when it cuts into food, it ruptures the cells of the food and it creates more surface area for oxygen to start to attack the cut surface. Conversely, a sharp knife cleaves through the molecules of the food so finely that there's minimal exposure to oxygen. A very easy to understand experiment is if you take your dull knife from your kitchen that you know is dull, and you take a freshly made hand sharpened knife and take the same apple and cut 1/3 of the apple off and just leave it for 20 minutes with the dull knife, and do the same thing with the sharp knife. You cut both pieces at the same time. You come back 20 minutes later and the apple that was cut with the dull knife is already starting to brown. But the piece of apple that was cut with the really sharp knife still looks like you just cut it a second ago. So that's—
What would happen if you replace that apple with, say, a magazine?
Yeah, well, of course, I do have a magazine here. Nice cue here. Yeah. So this is, as I said, this is a knife I made. It's a white steel core. I did want to kind of tie in the whole samurai swords and the kitchen knives, and that is, through centuries of the pursuit of making perfectly razor sharp samurai sword blades, one result was the sharpening stone research, and the mining of sharpening stone history is the samurai sword history. Because in order to learn about metallurgy, they had to be able to see into the steel. In order to see into the steel, they had to be able to abrade it and polish it in a way that they could see the crystalline structure. So the history of tennen toishi, which are natural Japanese water stones, is the history of samurai swords, because those two industries developed in symbiosis or in harmony. And so once they had really amazing sharpening stones, and they wanted to then transfer that knowledge to the food industry, they said, well, what is it about the samurai swords that make them cut so well? So they did a lot of, especially Hitachi Metalworks in Shimane Prefecture at the turn of the century, they dissected, did chemical analysis on some of the best swords that they could get their hands on. And unfortunately, a lot of these tests were destructive. But they found that the very best swords were just made of iron and carbon, which is what makes steel, but they had very, very limited amounts of phosphorus and sulfur, which is present in all steel, but it's considered a contaminant. And so the Hitachi Metalworks in particular, which makes the white and the blue steel, which I use exclusively, they make sure that their steel that they smelt in Shimane Prefecture is 10 times cleaner in terms of phosphorus and sulfur than any other steel in the world. When they smelt the steel and it comes out and they have a sample, if it's not within their acceptable tolerances, they throw it right back in the smelter and they resmelt.
Talk about sustainable practices. This relates back to, all the artisans within the Aichi Prefecture. So on that note, I know you have a little demo for us, but I also want to throw out two questions that you may be able to answer during that demo. Josh asks, why are Japanese knives only sharpened on one side? And then Gabriella asks, why have any soft steel in a kitchen knife? Is only having hard steel not okay?
Oh, I love Gabriella's question. But while I'm doing some demo there, so the soft steel does two things, Gabriella. It's like having a sheet of glass between two cushions. If a blade is just all hard, it's also brittle. And just like the samurai swords as well, if they were just all hard, when they were swinging them back and forth and hitting armor or other swords, that they could snap. So that's why they put the soft steel in there, so that metallurgically you can have your cake and eat it too. When you got both hard and soft in the same package, it's superior to a homogeneous steel blade, which is a blade that's got the same hardness throughout the whole blade. So it's a cushioning effect. It's a durable effect. But even more importantly, the only way we get a knife sharp, and I've alluded to it, is by abrading it on the sharpening stones. And the soft steel on the outside means that when you're grinding the secondary edge, and I'm going to introduce a new concept to our listeners today. They probably have never thought of blades in terms of a primary edge and a secondary edge, which goes from the spine all the way down to the primary edge. And the play of geometry between the primary edge and the secondary edge is what it means that a knife is sharp or not sharp. It's not sufficient alone for a blade just to be able to slice through something that has very little resistance, like a thread or one piece of paper, whatever. What's much more important is that if we take a magazine that's already got 100 and some odd pages in it and roll it up, I gotta be careful I don't hit the staple here. Be able to roll it up and cut that whole magazine through and through like that. That is less of a function of the primary edge and a lot more of a function of the secondary edge. So the primary edge starts the cut, the secondary edge is what allows you to push it through, whether it's a pork cutlet or your tamagoyaki. Obviously, tamagoyaki doesn't have much resistance, but there are a lot of foods like acorn squash, for example, or awabi, which is a kind of shellfish, and some other things I can think of that are kind of hard and leathery. So it's really important that you be able to push the blade through. So in order to get the right secondary geometry, you have to grind it on a stone to thin the blade down, especially as you use the blade and it gets narrower. You got a blade that's in a V shape. I'm trying to pack a lot of information here in a short amount of time. You tell me when I'm done. You get a V-shaped blade, and the steel down here at the primary edge is very thin, but with repeated sharpenings, you work your way back up into thicker metal, you see, as your blade narrows in use. So every user eventually has to thin down the secondary edge of their blade, and the mild steel on the outside allows that to happen much more quickly than if it's all carbon steel. So the answer, Gabrielle, to your question is, the mild steel also facilitates an ease of sharpening. In fact, the 3 high performance characteristics we're looking for in Japanese cutlery is how sharp can you get it? You've seen some demonstrations of sharp, which is the interplay between secondary and primary edge. How long will it hold its edge, which is a factor of how much carbon it's got in the steel, how it was forged, how it was quenched, and how many impurities like phosphorus and sulfur does it have in it. And then lastly, how easy is it to sharpen? And that is the most commonly overlooked factor in cutlery worldwide, but something that the Japanese never lost sight of with laminating their blades, that they understood that many chefs in Japan, when they get to work at 2 in the afternoon or whatever to get ready for the evening service, the first 20 minutes they spend sharpening their knives, so that every day they're using a razor sharp knife for that day's service. At least when I worked in a sushi restaurant, that's how we did it. So ease of sharpening is very important.
Murray, I got a question for you that actually will, for the sake of time, help anyone who's interested and more interested in what you have to say, because I want to go and start a Q&A and open forum. But the first question I want to ask everybody is, what is your website or reference that people can learn more about you or what you've been talking about during this? So Murray, please go first.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the shameless plugs. CarterCutlery.com is our website. But more importantly, if you're interested in sharpening or knives or anything like that, I have over 190 instructional videos for free up on YouTube. The best place to start is Blade Sharpening Fundamentals. We sold that video for years and years and years. It was our best seller, but last year I decided I wanted to put it up on the web for everyone to enjoy. And then the other clip that you saw 2 minutes of is called The History of the Yoshimoto Bladesmiths, and that's also on the Carter Cutlery channel. Those videos, just the blade sharpening fundamentals enough. If you watch that through to the end, you'll be somewhat of a knife expert. Thank you, Murray. And Kazumasa, can you tell us more about how someone can learn about your kabuki business, your dance school, as well as taking a tour with you if they ever come to Aichi?
Thank you. I just changed my name from Japanese to English, and because my name is a little long for English, and it's called Nishikawa, Nishikawa. And if you check for Japanese dance Nishikawa, you will find me. And since I'm bilingual, I'm always welcoming everyone from the whole world, and I would like to give you all the tours and all the information. So please feel free to ask me anything.
Thank you so much. And Akiko, I have to reference your wonderful book, A Complete Guide to Japanese Cuisine, which was certainly a primer for me when I first started getting interested in this. But where else can people hear from you, find you, learn more about Japanese cuisine as a whole? Well, Akiko, I believe we're on mute. Kiko, I think we're still on mute, so I'm actually just going to jump to Sachie for a second and come right back to you. Sachie, we didn't play a clip that you sent us of your wonderful TV show. I apologize for that. I was so focused on the food, but can you tell us where we can see that show as well as more of you, and if we ever do come to New Zealand, how we can take a class?
Absolutely. So the cooking show is about in 50 different countries. You can, I think you can buy my cookbook on Amazon as well, that you can find about all I do through my website, which is www.sachieskitchen.com. So SACHIES kitchen. And then shortly, I'm going to launch my online cooking class. So you might want it, if you are interested, feel free to tune into my social media, and we're going to announce that this month, wonderful. I think.
Thank you so much. And back to Akiko.
Okay, so I'm muted. So Yeah, I would like you to listen to my podcast slash radio show on the Heritage Radio Network. That's called Japan Eats. And yeah, so also you can go to my website, akikokatayama.com, and you can find more information about my writing and forks and everything else.
Wonderful. And not to shamelessly plug myself, but I have been working for the Aichi Food Export Group for the past few years. And we started an Instagram called @eat.aichi, EAT.AICHI. And we just started. We'd love it if you followed us. Gives you information about a new artisan ingredient whenever we post, from the hatcho miso that we've talked about, Nido Jozo's shiro tamari, Nanzanen Nishio matcha, as well as tsukudani, unagi, wonderful kanten jellies. I mean, there's so much within the region that we haven't even touched on in the show that I hope you all try to extend your knowledge and your admiration for Aichi. I know I do every single day. And I just want to show you, once again, I have my hatcho miso. You can try and find yours too. And what I love about these products, and I also have my Mito Jozo Shiro Tamari, is that aside from what Sachie just cooked, they have such versatility. The miso, I feel like, can swing from sweet to savory. The soy sauce as well, as a backbone for many sauces, it never gets so cloying with its depth and color. After having sat through this discussion, have any of you either changed your mind about how Aichi should be perceived or how you might utilize ingredients from Aichi in the future? See, there's that modesty that you were talking about.
I'm so proud of Aichi right now. I really appreciate Sachie and Murray's information. It was very helpful. And I would like to translate this to Japanese, and I have to tell that to whole Japanese friends.
Excellent. Thank you. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I can't thank you all enough for participating, all the attendees for tuning in. And again, Murray, Sachie, Akiko, Kaz, MOFAD, Greene Space, and Aichi. I mean, the reason we have this is because I got to go to Aichi a few years ago, and it's been in the back of my brain and come to the frontal lobe, and hopefully it comes into your all kitchen soon. It is a extremely intriguing area to explore, and don't just pass it by en route to Kyoto and Osaka. Please do stop in not only Nagoya, but check out the rest of the prefecture. On that note, again, thank you very much for joining us. And just know that Greene Space and MOFAD are live next month, April 8th, with a fun look at the Caribbean Chinese fried rice. So head to thegreenspace.org and mofad.org for more details. And on that note, I just want to say be well, stay safe, and everybody have a wonderful night. Thank you.